So this is an analogy that's been in the back of my brain long before any podcast was there.
Sure. Seem to be getting an analogy once an episode or now, Christian.
Yeah, explain in blank terms. So normally it's explain in NBA or NFL, but today's explain in music terms. So this was an era of mine, high school, a little angsty. Loved that just like 2000s rock kind of thing. So, Birchie, what is the one song from college that just got beaten to your head so many times that you couldn't bear to listen to it? Normally like a close down at the bar kind of song.
Mr. Brightside or
right, you had it nailed on
Weezer.
that. Weezer. Stop
Okay.
right there, Mr. Brightside. So I want to talk about Mr. Brightside today. I want you to think of Mr. Brightside. Do you want to sing it loud? I was actually going to put it up, but it might get copyrighted.
I'm gonna pass on that.
All right,
Appreciate
fair
it.
enough. I want you to think of Mr. Brightside as the moment, as the climax of, if you will, of American soccer. I don't know what that looks like exactly. I don't know if that's winning a World Cup. That would be ambitious. I don't know if that's semis. I don't know if it's beating Brazil. I don't know what it is. But it's the moment that we all look at one another and go, this is a proper soccer country and like a proper player on the international stage. So I want you to think of Mr. Brightside as that. Who's Mr. Brightside by, Lodge? You're kind of thinking about it for a while.
Yeah.
You serious right now?
No, I mean I'm not thinking about it. It's Christian Pulisic. There's no
No,
ifs, ands.
no.
Oh,
Jump
the Killers.
Yes, the
Killers.
Just
So
play
you're
the
asking me who's the Killers
Yeah,
in this situation? Okay.
yeah, sorry.
I jumped the gun. I definitely jumped the gun there. Yeah.
All right, so I want you to think about the Killers as the group that is going to win the U.S. Maybe it's that World Cup, whatever that moment is, whatever that looks like, the talented group that vaults us on the world stage, okay? Now, the Killers are a product of many bands like them. Think like Arctic Monkeys, like Franz Ferdinand, any of those bands, if you've heard those songs. Yeah, so they're one of several. So in a sense, yeah, they obviously deserve all the credit for Mr. Brightside and, closing down the bar like many nights in college, but they are one of many that could have got that kind of pinnacle, that song, right? All right, now I want to talk about one more band, and that is the Strokes. That is my favorite band. So the Strokes in 2001 came out with an album, Is This It?
Is this it? Yeah.
You like that one?
Big fan.
Virgie?
I don't know.
You're
No,
not
no.
sure? Okay, anyways. But Is This It, was a huge thing, especially, it floated over to the UK and back again to the US. But essentially, it was this sound, this kind of rock sound that had some 70s and 80s mixed in, but also some
Tom Petty and some American Girl.
a little bit. Yeah. So funny you say that. One of the Strokes songs was like,
Oh no, I'm aware.
okay, yeah. So they were, said they copied Tom Petty, but so that was they kind of struck gold in the sense of not only the songs they made on this album, but also the sound. People loved the sound and kind of this leap they made. They were the first mover in this category. Okay, and so I want you to think about Christian Pulisic as the Strokes. Okay, now the Strokes. Maybe some of you are hearing about them for the first time, and you know who the Killers are, or you know who the Arctic Monkeys are. But the Strokes and Christian Pulisic are similar in that they were the first mover. Okay? They did what no one else had done before, and they popularized a thing and a trend that would go on to really dominate their given space. And so when the Killers were asked about their song Mr. Brightside and how it compared to other bands, they said, Mr. Brightside and all our songs, we are not in the same category as the Strokes. The Strokes are a million times better than us. On the Arctic Monkeys, 2016 album or whatever it was, the first line of the album was, I just wanted to be one of the Strokes. In other words, all those bands that we talked about that really could have made that Mr. Brightside song, all those quality bands, Arctic Monkeys, Killers, Franz Ferdinand, they were all inspired by the same band, the Strokes. Christian Pulisic is the Strokes of the U.S. men's national team, and here's why. Because at 15 years old, he was just a 15-year-old kid like any of us were, and he had talent, and he was scouted and whatnot. But Lodge, here's something that I've thought about. You played youth soccer, maybe not to that level.
Certainly not.
But so yeah, to clarify, but he was scouted at a camp, right? Like a World Cup camp. Am I really supposed to believe that he was the first American talent to be scouted at a camp at 15 years old?
Highly doubt it. Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't that he was. It's not that he's our best soccer player ever because, he essentially was the most talented we've ever had, but rather he got a call at 15 years old, and at 15 years old he decided to move his whole life over to Germany, where he didn't speak the language. And to be clear, it's not like he got handed a contract and like the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. It was very much like okay, you can be in our academy, but like, who knows what's going to happen? Like, he could have essentially thrown away his whole high school, maybe, at that point, college, right? Like, what do you even do to be this kind of first mover in this space? And so, as I say this, the United States men's national team's Mr. Brightside moment, whatever that is, there will be no one more to do with it than Christian Pulisic, because he has inspired like a massive, sweeping generation of Americans to make that jump overseas, take that risk, and essentially normalize like moving your life over to Europe when it doesn't feel like it makes sense. Like, there's a retort to this that says, hey, well, like Brazilian kids have been doing this for however long. Argentinian kids have been doing this. Like, what makes Americans special in this context? And what I would say is, like, if people around you are doing it, if it's like the thing, then you're going to be into it. You're going to believe in it, and like you're going to accept it with open arms. But when you feel like you're the first mover, you're one of the only ones to do it. It's a lot more daunting, I'd say. Joe?
Yeah, and one of the things I'm thinking about is you've talked about what's the pivotal moment on the field. Is it we get out of the group stage? Is it we beat Brazil? Is it we do X, Y, Z? Then there's the pivotal moment in terms of youth soccer and how the United States views youth soccer. And then I'm thinking about also culturally, what is the pivotal moment culturally? Is the pivotal moment when I can name 10 soccer players and we have that kind of buy-in from the average American sports fan? Is it that I will actually pay money for extra soccer TV channels? Is it that I'm buying merchandise? What's the cultural pivotal moment that we need to see?
Personally, I think that's yet to be seen. I mean, similar to how when the Strokes were making music, they didn't know that the Killers were going to come out. They didn't know that Franz Ferdinand was going to come out. All those great things came out of it, but it's almost like a wait and see.
I also think, like you see, we're getting a World Cup in 4 years. As Lodge and I have talked about on this podcast, like, it's about eyeballs. So if these players can, like in this World Cup coming up, if they can capture hearts and minds, then the cultural aspect is a byproduct, in my opinion. And even like, there's kind of an idea out there that like Americans need to embrace the MLS in order for America to be a good soccer country. That's a whole nother conversation, but I don't believe the answer is yes. Not that that's not anti-MLS, despite the fact that we've been accidentally anti-MLS. But I don't believe that to be true. I just think that, as Lodge has said many times, America likes winners. So if this team can go out there and prove that, which is very much a byproduct of the kind of awesome things Christian Pulisic has done, then I think that cultural kind of change will happen. And so, in my opinion, despite the fact that, to finish the story on the Strokes, so the Strokes burst on the scene, made this incredible album, and from there, like, went pretty slightly downhill. Obviously, they had fans, which is like, art is way more subjective thing, but there's a general consensus that they went downhill from there and inspired a wave of people who would really bring the quality out in this music. And in the same way, Christian Pulisic, his career has already been rocky. It's been filled with really cool moments, but his day-to-day has always been like a source of drama or whatnot for the U.S. men's national team. So in that way, it's unclear whether or not his legendary status is going to like continue in the next 10 years that he plays. But in my opinion, he will always be a legend for that. Just to give you some numbers, when he went over in 2018, when he was really bursting on the scene, there was 9 players in the top 5 leagues in the Champions League in Europe. Several of those players, probably like 3 or 4 of them, were dual national players who were like half German, half American, who our coach at the time had recruited. And today, just 4 years later, there's 22. Way more of those are players who lived in the U.S., decided to make that jump because they wanted to be like Christian Pulisic, and did so. And so that number's up from 9 to 22. But then even if you expanded that into some of the other European leagues, like say the soccer league that's in the Netherlands, which isn't as good as like the top ones, but is also more competitive than like the MLS, with no disrespect. That number is like way larger. That number's like grows from like 22 to 50. And so that's kind of like the level of impact his emergence at Dortmund takes. And that's why he is the Strokes of the U.S. men's national team.
Pulisic is the Strokes. I like it.
Yeah.